Well, with two failed executive orders and a no-go on repealing Obamacare, U.S. President Donald Trump has little to brag about on the domestic front. Will he have better luck with his foreign policy agenda? Now, Donald Trump is heading into a very big week, the most important so far in his presidency in terms of diplomacy. He'll receive 3 foreign leaders this week, and let's start at the end of the week and then work our way back. The most important meeting comes on Thursday when Trump welcomes the Chinese President Xi Jinping at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida. Now, remember, Trump has promised to get tough on the Chinese over trade. This weekend, Trump said that the U.S. was ready to act alone against North Korea if China does not take action. Jordan's King Abdullah, now he is due in Washington on Wednesday. Jordan is a key ally of the United States in the Middle East. Those talks will probably focus on the fight against Islamic State and the Syrian conflict. Now, those issues also high on the agenda today as Trump meets the Egyptian president, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Now, this will be Sisi's first visit to the White House since he led the military overthrow of President Morsi back in 2013. All right, let's pull in our correspondent, Maya Schwader. She's on the story for us in Washington tonight. Good evening to you, Maya. Let's start with Egypt. Obama never invited President al-Sisi to the White House. Trump says he wants to reboot or he wants to reset relations between the two countries. Do we know what that's going to look like?
Well, it's important to remember that the reason Obama refused to invite al-Sisi to the White House was his human rights record, which, frankly, according to many human rights groups, is abysmal. He's accused of disappearances and arbitrary detentions, and that is still ongoing. However, Trump feels that al-Sisi is going to be an important partner in the fight against terrorism and militant Islamism in the Middle East. And indeed, part of Sisi's human rights record is this fight against jihad in Egypt. So Trump is willing to basically overlook these, it seems, in order to have a stronger attack against groups like ISIS.
We've got Egypt, Jordan, China all this week. How important are these meetings with foreign leaders? How important are they to Trump domestically?
Well, as you had mentioned at the beginning, he suffered several domestic political defeats recently. This is a way for him to sort of shore up his support once more and show that he is still in charge and that he can still handle meeting these foreign leaders. Now, we have to remember that, especially with China, he wants to renegotiate lots of trade deals. He wants to be much more aggressive when it comes to competing with China economically. So this meeting with President Xi over the weekend is going to be especially important.
I want you to take a listen now to what the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations said today about North Korea, China, and the U.S.
Can stop North Korea is China, and they know that. You're going to see President Trump meet with President Xi, and a lot of conversation, and the most important conversation, will be how we're going to be dealing with the non-proliferation of North Korea.
All right, there she said right there, the most important conversation. Haley, she does not even mention human rights as an item to discuss with the Chinese leader. I mean, Trump has signaled that he just wants to kind of push human rights issues to the side. Does that make the U.S. and its influence stronger?
Well, it seems that Trump's priority is simply eliminating any threats to the United States, human rights violations or no. So North Korea is certainly on that list. And we know that when President Obama was leading office, his biggest warning to President Trump was that the greatest threat to America right now was North Korean nuclear power. So it certainly seems that Trump is willing to do deals with countries that have these not so great, to put it lightly, human rights records, simply to shore up American security.
All right, our correspondent Maya Schwader on the story for us tonight in Washington. Maya, thank you very much. Well, I'm joined now from Washington by Ahmed Ben Chemsi with Human Rights Watch. Good evening to you, Ahmed. Trump calls his invitation to the Egyptian president to visit the White House part of a rebooting of relations. Would you call it a rebooting that kicks out human rights?
Well, definitely. I mean, President Trump said after he met Sisi that he's done, and I'm quoting him, a fantastic job in a very difficult situation. I really don't know what he means by that, given the absolutely appalling human rights record since President Sisi took office. There was this massacre in Rabat Square, possibly the worst killing of unarmed civilians in modern history in one day, about 1,000 protesters, according to some account. Overall, since the Sisi regime has been in place, we have seen the resurgence of routine use of torture, extrajudicial killings, arrests of tens of thousands of protesters, enforced disappearances. Laws have been passed to ban protests. Constraints on civil society are so great that its work is effectively paralyzed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's even journalism. There are some absurd restrictions, like the legal obligation for journalists to publish only the account of the Ministry of Defense on terrorism issue. So, I mean, I really don't know what he's talking about.
The former U.S. President, Barack Obama, now he refused to invite al-Sisi to the White House because of his role in overthrowing President Morsi, as well as the human rights abuses that your organization documents. I mean, what does it mean to your cause when you see a U.S. president rolling out the red carpet for al-Sisi now?
Well, Obama did refuse to invite al-Sisi, and his administration froze the aid to Egypt for 2 years. But it's fair to remind that the military aid resumed in 2015 under Obama. Now, Trump administration wants to increase it, and their main argument is that it will help the fight against terrorism. But what you should know is that military forces, in the name of combating terrorism, have committed torture and disappearances and likely extrajudicial killings. Even one of them even staged as the counterterrorism red with a grossly doctored propaganda video that we published a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. So, I mean, this is no way to fight against terrorism. And that is the main argument of the Trump administration. So they are just grossly mistaken.
Today, in a press release on the al-Sisi visit to Washington, your colleague at Human Rights Watch, Sarah Margon, writes, giving more money to the Sisi government is to the detriment of U.S. and Egyptian interests. The gross abuses being committed by Egyptian authorities should compel Congress to keep limiting support. Is that the only means that Washington has to influence Egypt? Money?
Well, that's a very serious need. I mean, when President Trump says that he is very much behind Egypt and the people of Egypt, that might mean that they are considering an increase in aid, even though apparently there were off-the-record statements saying that this wouldn't happen, but we don't know for sure. So yes, I mean, giving money to the current Egyptian administration would clearly signal a support and a continuous support of its ongoing human rights abuses, and that would be absolutely unacceptable.
And how do you see things from where you are? How likely is it that Congress, the U.S. Congress, will continue to limit support for the Egyptian government?
I mean, even if the U.S. Congress in the past has conditioned financial aid to Egypt to some measures showing more respect for human rights, this has not prevented the military cooperation to continue unabated. So, I mean, Congress can only do so much. Yet, we really urge the U.S. Congress to continue to put such restrictions as a way to signal that the United States of America is not against Sisi unconditionally, as President Trump said.
And in the meantime, your organization, documents that human rights abuses continue in Egypt. Is there any reason to think that a change could come under President al-Sisi?
Well, if more pressure is applied on him, and if he didn't feel that his human rights abuses, that he has a past in such important capitals as Washington and London and Paris and other capitals in the West, maybe he would feel more pressure to curb his human rights abuses. That's not what's happening so far.
All right. Ahmed Ben Chemsi with Human Rights Watch joining us tonight from Washington. Ahmed, thank you very much.